Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jim Holcomb, president of the SAIA. I want to welcome you to another SAIA educational webinar. Today, we are examining our 2019 Suspended Access Project of the Year awarded to SkyClimber LLC for their safe access for LED sign installation at 100 Peachtree Street in Atlanta, Georgia. Presenting this webinar will be Randall Wheeler. Randall has been with SkyClimber since 2004, first as a production manager in manufacturing and later as a territory manager for their Atlanta location. Randall is a Georgia native and has the unique perspective of seeing the suspended scaffold industry from the engineering and manufacturing sides as well as from the field application side. Please welcome Mr. Randall Wheeler.
Well, thank you, Jim, and hello to everyone. Hope you're having a great afternoon. To expand upon Jim saying that I've been on all aspects of the evolution of SkyClimber products, I really have been fortunate enough to see the transformation of unloading trucks full of aluminum and steel, taking it through the manufacturing process of cutting, drilling, welding, grinding, and then stacking and packing that product and shipping it all over the world to our customers. And then the other transformation of actually seeing this product, of this new product in our field applications. In the real world, in the field, the customer comes up to you and says, they point at a certain obscure area on a building, an elevator shaft, a bridge, you name it, and says, I need you to get me there. And we smile at them and says, you know, we can make that happen. So when I think about the projects over the years that really epitomize the many uses of SkyClimber projects in many different environments, I think back to, you know, whether you're on a hydro dam in the beautiful North Georgia mountains, setting up stages so they can access the dam, and you look around and you say, man, are we lucky to be here to have this opportunity. Or you're 200 feet over a cargo ship trying to help the customer access the gigantic beams on a ship-to-shore crane in the port of Savannah. I mean, not many people see that from that application. And then we set up stages and they're suspended over the seats of a new football stadium. And you think, wow, I bet a lot of fans would love to enjoy this view during the game. And then I'd like to talk about our recent project, the journey of our Georgia's Own sign project. I'd like to share that journey with all y'all. It began in the late spring of 2018. Customer called and says, Randall, I need y'all to come up with an access plan to move tons of equipment and personnel with a variety of scopes, 30 stories in the building, up to the top of the parapet wall. I need the stage to trolley in and out around outriggers, and I need material hoist. Because we need to install a sign the full width of the building, 20 feet high, right on the edge. And oh, by the way, it's not just one side of the building, it's both sides of the building. And one other detail, we need it done before the Super Bowl in 2019. And you just kind of realize the huge scale of the project, and you're a little nervous, excited, and you get that fire in the pit of your stomach says, you know what, we're going to make this happen. Bring it on. And that's exactly what we did. Let me tell you about it. First, as I mentioned, this project was 100 Peachtree. The Atlanta residents all were getting ready to prepare for the 53rd Super Bowl. Many buildings owners, the Mercedes-Benz were no different. You know, they had fancy signage everywhere, none more noticeable than the freshly rebranded Georgia's Own building. This building was formerly known as the Equitable Building. It was a true icon. As it was, you topped the skyline, you could see the words Equitable shining for many miles away. I mean, there were hundreds of incandescent lights. Since the late 60s, you knew you were in Atlanta. 32 stories tall, 32 stories tall and 453 feet. Our scope was to provide access to remove the original Equitable sign and install LED displays in its place. As I mentioned before, our deadline was the Super Bowl. We had to have the sign erected on both sides of the building, and it had to be operational by February of 2019. What a task. So the equipment that we used on this project was 68 roof anchors, so the equipment and the operators could tie off, 10 trolleyed swing stages. Like I mentioned, we had to be able to trolley in and out around outriggers holding up the sign, material hoist systems to position large steel outriggers and lift the sign sections, an assisted rescue safety rope system. Before, as I mentioned, there's the Equitable sign just shining bright. You could see it from many miles away. Over 50 years old, since 1968, this 32-story tower supported the Equitable sign on both sides of the building. It was originally home to AXA Equitable Life Insurance Company. The building was sold in 1997, is now the home of Georgia's Own Credit Union. And this is what it looked afterwards. Oh, there were some, billboards in Atlanta were definitely not Times Square, and that was a lot of pushback around the Atlanta area. Did not want us to look like Times Square with flashing electronic signs. Atlanta really did not have a lot, but there were no other signs. This was really going to set raise the bar, if you will. There were no other signs this large, this high, and with as much exposure as the ones we did at 100 Peachtree. Well, how did we do it? Well, we pooled together all of Sky Climbers resources, got everyone involved. And with the GC and all the subs, we had a lot of meetings. And first we said, what does the building of this type have now? Well, typically when you go on a roof of a 50-year-old building, it's a virtual desert of anchor opportunities, support structures. There's nothing. And same here. It was a beautiful sea of white TPO roof membrane, a few vents in the way. That was it. There was an old antiquated steel beam that ran the perimeter behind the parapet wall, but most of the fasteners, bolts, and nuts were rusted on it, and I said, there's no way that we're going to hang anything off that. So we knew then we're going to have to install roof anchors. And so we had designed and installed anchors to be the safety line tiles and the tiles for the beam. These roof anchors were 18 inches high, and the 14 by 14 plates had 8 holes in them that we used hardware fasteners and installed it via epoxy anchors. Were there challenges? Absolutely. In this first part, before we can even begin with the roof anchors, this building was occupied. To install roof anchors, you need to hammer drill. So I'll never forget the first day that we attempted to hammer drill during the daytime in this occupied building. The first 2 minutes of a guy pressing a trigger, reverberations rang out through the building, and one of the executives called the GC and said, stop that noise. So we knew then that we were either going to have to work after hours, and we did, or weekends, and we did. We also had to coordinate with the roofing contractor and the unpredictable weather. The challenge in opening up an existing building versus new construction, if you open up a roof membrane, the roofer will only allow us to open up as many holes and install anchors that he could close in one day and secure with waterproofing. And then you had to constantly keep an eye on the weather. So basically it took weeks to get these 68 anchors in, but we did it. That was the beginning. Then we had to plan, how are we going to lay the stages out? How are we going to get these trolleys, you know, the stages of trolleys around these 4-foot outriggers coming off the building, holding up the structure. Each stage had 2 hoists, 500 feet of wire rope, and 2 trolleys. The challenge in this old building is usually ill-equipped. It had one single freight elevator. And this freight elevator, not only did it stay broke down half the time because it was just not equipped to do this amount of volume. The first 3 floors of the Georgia Zone Credit Union building was being gutted and rebuilt out. So we literally had to share it with a lot of interior contractors. So again, you had to schedule and plan around just getting equipment to the roof, and literally tons of equipment had to go to the roof, and tons of equipment had to go in and out of the building from demolition purposes for the interior build out. Has anybody got any questions so far? Okay. Then we had to plan the safety systems. You know, when I talked to the GC and they asked the question, what happens if somebody falls off a swing stage? Well, the answer was, well, there's the fire department about a mile away, and they could take that same freight elevator to the roof, rig up their rappelling apparatus, and go down. By that time, 20 minutes would have passed. And said that's not acceptable. So we just really kind of pooled the resources of our wind and renewables division with their experience with kern metal rope, or most people think of mountain climbing rope, and the rescue systems that was used in our wind division, and the Petzl components. And we said, you know, we've got to come up with something better. So we devised a plan using this kern metal rope, and which would provide, in case of an operator fell off a swing stage, the rescue team could immediately go to the Petzl descent device and lower the operator to safety. How this was done, you had a 500-foot building. We stored 500 feet of the same rope on the roof, so you had a consistent, continuous 1,000 linear foot kern metal rope. The Petzl Descenders were attached to the roof anchors, and you see how they're positioned on the anchors right behind the beams. The 500 foot was lowered over the side of the building for the operator safety line, and they used the Petzl ASAP rope grabs, and then the Petzl IDs Descenders was attached. In case of emergency, there was 500 feet stored on the roof, so an operator can safely get down. Here's a closer look. Notice how the Petzl ID is taped off, double carabinered to the anchor, and the rope bag had 500 feet stored in it. Any questions about that safety system? It really solved a lot of problems. You know, if you're aware, if an operator falls in his harness for any length of time, you can have suspension trauma, where basically blood clots could build up, and once released, it could be catastrophic. We devised a plan that we didn't have to wait 20 minutes for the local rescue fire team to get up there. We could immediately act upon it and get the operator safely to the ground before suspension trauma set in. Next, we installed the material lifting rigs. Now, these rigs consisted of two 1,250-pound hoists, and they were synchronized with what we call CCBs, Central Control Box. You can see the operator down there in the lower right-hand corner. You can either have a master control that will control two hoists at the same time, or you can operate hoist individually to even the load. This allowed the contractors to bring the sign sections up evenly, or if one got out of balance, then they could tweak it to keep it leveled. And once into place, they could fine tune it to get it attached to the building, whether it was the outriggers or the sign sections. This was a really cool part. I really enjoyed this. So you can see the outriggers are actually installed on the building, and a helicopter crane was moving from an adjacent parking lot into position onto the outriggers. And these things weigh tens of thousands of pounds, so we couldn't actually lift them with our material hoist systems, but the helicopter crane made short work of it. It was a beautiful Saturday morning around 7 a.m. and you heard this whop, 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 and come peering over the horizon from a local parking lot where all the catwalks are stored, just came in precisely, landed these catwalk sections. It was truly a sight to behold. Now came time for execution. We had the outriggers in place, all the stages were moved out of the way, and then we had the material hoist systems set up precisely where they needed to be. Large trailers pulled in. They only had like 4 of these sign sections on, weighing about 1,800 pounds apiece. They were very delicate. You can imagine they were LED lights. So if you were to bump or drag another section over it, you destroyed it. So the operators on the roof actuated the wire ropes down to the sign sections, and they were expertly rigged up. And then the material lifting system was used to attach the sections to ascend the building. Up and up and up. It's really hard to get an idea through pictures exactly how tall this was, but it took several minutes just for the sign sections to ascend in. So waiting up top were welders. You can see that young man barely. As the sign section got into position on the catwalks, the material hoist guys would talk back and forth, and they would precisely up, down, 1 inch, 2 inch, left, right, and then boom. Once they got it into the section, then the welders would attach it to the structure. Any questions? This was pretty impressive here.
Hey, Randall, this is Kit. I do have a question. How heavy were those sign sections?
18.
Out of curiosity.
Yeah, most of them were 1,800 pounds. They were like 26 by 6 tall.
Oh, wow.
And then some of the sections on the very top were like 3-footers, so they weighed half that. So
okay.
you can imagine.
Wow.
So you can see that rigging had to be done exactly right. Before the last sections were installed, the contractors were able to autograph the back of the sign, kind of like a capsule. And you better believe we took that opportunity too. So in many years, when service people go to service a sign, we're up there, Sky Climber Access Solutions, and our crew was Doug, Stephen, and Jut, and many others that really supported us in this project. When the final sections were installed, the fully assembled signs was 174 feet long, 20 feet tall on both sides of the tower.
Oh, so.
We were finally ready for the big game. All the items under the contracted scope was done by December 28th. Yes. And the project was finished on schedule and under budget. The electronic sign was illuminated the second week of January. We did many tests and it worked perfect. So when, you better believe I was watching on February 3rd, 2019. Yeah, the football game was fun, but I kept watching for the Georgia Zone sign to pop up. When it did, I jumped out of my seat. So, you know, it was one of those times where you're proud of all your team. We did it, just like we promised in the beginning. It was a successful project. Any questions? All right.
Actually, I have. This is Kit again. So can you tell me a little bit more about exactly how did the trolleyed part of the trolleyed swing stages, describe how that works? I'm trying to kind of visualize it a little bit.
So,
Okay. Go ahead.
So on each outrigger beam for the swing stages, we installed 2-ton trolleys. They were chain driven. The chains hung down around 60 feet. So as the swing stage approached the sign, the operator was able to grab the chains and pull the stage in or pull the stage out. And you had projected outriggers were sticking out from the building, and they had to get the swing stages around it, in and out, and then so metal cladding people can come in and repair where the old Equitable sign was. So it's basically 2-ton trolleys on each outrigger, chain driven by each operator on the swing stage.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I often enjoyed many sunrise pictures, and this is one from the top of the Georgia Zone building. Are there any questions, comments?
This is Susan from Orientex Scaffolding. I have a question. How long did the project last from the start to the end?
Honestly, not long enough. Like in the beginning, we really got started good in the summer of 2018 and had to be done basically by January. Well, we were done by December, the end of December. So the project lasted around 7 months of actual equipment on the building to a fully functional sign. Good question.
Yeah, and further that you mentioned about the need to cooperate with the weather and only can work when weather allowed. How were the situations during those times?
Well, the good thing is the more delicate part of this project was done in the fall and the winter, early winter. So here in the South, we get a lot of unexpected thunderstorms in the summer, so this timing kind of worked out. What you have to work around, as I first mentioned, was when we were opening the roof to install the anchors. If there was any threat of rain whatsoever, we had to delay it because we could not risk water getting into the building of an occupied building. Next, you can imagine a building of this size, 174 feet wide, 454 feet tall, and other high rises around it. As you can see, the Georgia Pacific building, it creates its own wind. So it could be very calm at the ground, but once you get a swing stage aloft, 250 feet, 300, 400, the wind can play quite a factor in the safety of the swing stages. So water and wind, we really had to keep track of that. And there were weather meters on top of the building, and we had apps on our phone, so we knew anytime, night or day, what the weather was, what the temperature, what the current conditions. Thank you very much. Great question.
No No problem. Actually, I read your project, the story on the magazine, and now I heard your presentation is very impressive project. I'm just congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Any more?
Just to jump in here real quick, if anybody does have questions but you're unable to connect to audio, feel free to use the chat and I would be more than happy to communicate those to Randall.
Hey guys, this is Kit again. You know, Randall, when you and I talked about this project over the last couple of years, you know, you talked about this being a career-defining project for you and a lot of the people who worked on it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yes, like I mentioned in the beginning, there's a few projects that really stand out over the years and that you'll never forget, and your team members never forget. We even reminisce from time to time. Hey, you remember when we did that hydro dam project? You remember when we did, you know, et cetera. Well, this is definitely one of them. When we talk about career defining, not for me, it's for everybody. And in the sense of career defining, it's something that you will always remember, something that you will tell your children and your children's children. Hey, back in the day, we did the Equitable Building that was an icon for 50 years and changed it to the Georgia's own LED sign display. So yes, that in essence is something in your career that you'll never forget, and it's the pinnacle of Sky Climber products. We use a variety of standard products in ways to just really make seem like a daunting task totally possible and successful at it. Good question, Kit.
I got a question through chat. This one is asking, a photo showed the material hoist tied down without counterweight to a roof anchor. How were the anchors attached to the structure?
Okay, the anchors were attached to the structure, as I mentioned, via 1414 plates. They had 8 holes in it. We use Hilti fasteners. We would drill a hole, insert a Hilti epoxies, and then the fasteners, and then tighten that anchor plate down to the fastener. You would be amazed at the technology of the epoxy. I mean, literally, when it was it could be freezing temperatures in a matter of a few minutes. You could do a pull test if required, and boom, it would pass a pull test. So when at all possible, we had many discussions with the engineer of record on this building. They were highly concerned about the amount of tonnage that we were putting on the building. Is there any way you can eliminate all those counterweights? Well, if you strategically place a roof anchor where the end of a outrigger beam would be toward the rear of the beam, you could tie down and turnbuckle to that anchor, which is equivalent of thousands of pounds of counterweights that you're not putting on the building. So it was turnbuckled down and also tied back to another anchor behind it. Great question.
Randall, this is Mike Palladino. How are you?
Fine, Mike.
I'll go back to the safety plan. Were all workers trained in this?
In the operation of the stage or
in the operation of the rescue?
Oh, there were a few select people that were on the rescue team. So say the operator's riding the stage, you know, they might not necessarily be trained on how to activate the Petzl device to lower it. We had just a handful of people of the steel erectors and people that were in charge of that process at the time were absolutely, Mike, fully trained, invested in how to, in case of emergency, lowering a fallen operator down to the ground safely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, any more comments or questions? These are good. Keep them coming.
All right,
If
again.
you're not- Oh, sorry.
No, I've got one more. So in going back to the safety setup, the rescue access setup, you know, this seems like what you use here with the 1,000 feet of rope, it's definitely different from, it sounds like, from what you've seen in the industry. Why do you think it's not used more often, out of curiosity? I'm not that familiar with it, so I'm curious.
Sad to say, cost. So in a typical temporary stage on the side of a building, you use 5/8 polydac safety lifeline, 5,000 pound capacity. That lifeline is attached to either an anchor structure and lowered down the side of the building. And it is probably cost around 40 cents a foot. So you get a lot of contractors just, well, no, just this lower the rope. We're only going to be on this elevation for a couple of days or weeks. In this application, at this height, and for this many months of duration, we had to come up with something better. And I would love for more GCs, not just to look at cost, but look at safety. And I think it's much better application. Sure, the price of kern metal rope and the fancy Petzl Descenders and rope grabs, yeah, they're expensive, absolutely. But, you know, what's the price of life? What's the price of suspension trauma? You can't measure safety, you know, and unfortunately, a lot of people boil it down to dollars and cents. After this project, we really wanted to talk to GCs on jobs that we go to and come up with like a assisted rescue safety plan for them. But there again, you get the monetary pushback. So Kit, it is a much better system. It's foolproof, it's safe, it's quick, but it costs. Good question, Kit, thanks. Any more?
I do not have any more in the chat.
Okay, guys, I really appreciate your time today. I enjoy sharing this project with you. We're very proud of it. It is one, like I mentioned before, be it on the hydro dam, on a crane over a port. This is one that we're not going to forget. Our whole team, Sky Climber team, played a heavy role in it, and it turned out successful. So the next time a customer asks me a question, can you get me there? I say, oh yeah, we'll make that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randall. Great presentation.
You got it, Jim.
Be sure and join us. Thanks. Be sure and join us next Tuesday, August 25th at 11 a.m. Central Time for another educational webinar as we examine our 2019 shoring project of the year awarded to PCI Scaffold for their enhanced circulation elevator relocation project. Also, if you haven't registered yet for our virtual convention to be held September 15th through the 17th, please go to the SAIA website and register today. All attendees registered before August 28th will receive a welcome box in the mail sponsored by B Access Products. Thanks for attending. Be safe and enjoy the rest of your day.